This is our third session, and thank you very much, Lisa, for coming in for this session on growing our community.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. I am very, very, very happy to be here. And I'm really excited to run through all of these things. I have an embarrassingly large number of slides, so I'm going to ask for your forgiveness on this, because once I get started, I was like, oh, we can talk about this all day long. Since it's a small group, do you mind if I start by just getting an idea of kind of where everybody is at and what their business looks like?
Yeah. Do you want to just put that in the chat?
If you're on here right now hanging out with us, JP, Eleanor, Jack, Suzanne, DJ, I'd love to just take 1 minute and get an idea where y'all are located, and just really what type of business you have, so that as we're going through, I'm just being thoughtful on what that is.
Suzanne, you're on mute.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, my darling. Oh, Suzanne, you're muted. Let me see if I may unmute you. Am I allowed to do that? No, my button doesn't.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I haven't got any voice, so I'm doing this really quickly. I am in a hotel leisure club. We have about 2,500 members. We use LegitFit just for classes to things. So we would book about maybe 300 participants in the week. So it's purely a booking system for us in that way, and also for our PT.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. DJ, how about you?
Yeah, we're working with small setup here. We've got 230 people. We work with two cohorts. One is 40 to 60, which you do exercise and nutrition with, and the other then it's 60 to probably 85. We do exercise class with those then as well. So it's all class based. So we kind of running all day for that. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Eleanor, how about you?
Hi, Lise. How are you? I have a reformer Pilates studio in Clonmel, Tipperary in Ireland.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I actually did one of your courses, in lockdown. It really helped me when I opened the business. So yeah. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm delighted to see so many Irish voices on here. My dear cousin is the CEO of Kerry Food Group. And so we spend a lot of time at our family farm in Kerry County. So this is feels a little bit like I'm surrounded by family right now, and looking forward to this. Well, let me tell you, I'm going to get us started, but I want to give you kind of an idea of where I came to this from, because we talk about building community. I normally think, why are we building community? And we're building community because we want to retain, and not just retention when it comes to our clients, but retention when it comes to our team, retention when it comes to our culture, retention when it comes to so much more. So I'm going to run us through, let's see, Josh, I can share my screen right here. Let's see, perfect. I'm going to share my entire screen just in case I need to back out if you're going to pull up any documents. So please do not react with fear. See if we'll do it this way. Did that share, Josh? Can you guys see Studio Grow Live?
No.
Can you see?
No, we cannot.
I'm getting an error message on this.
Do you want to send it to me and I can share the screen as well, if that works?
Wait.
Yeah.
Can you see it now? Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. All right. We are ready to go. All right, guys, if we haven't met before, my name is Lise Kuecker. I'm the founder at Studio Grow. We're a team of 55. We are located quite literally all over the world. In fact, quite a few of my team members are located in the general vicinity of you. I started as a studio owner. I became, I would say, so much more than that as where we went unintentionally, but led me down quite an entrepreneurial path. I am an investor in a number of different businesses and brands that are all over the world. Our little initial investment of 25,000 US dollars, we have turned into almost $100 million in sales at this point. They are not here with me today because it is literally the first day of school here in the States. But my very large 16-year-old with a size 49 shoe, I think that's how we're going to translate that on this, and my very cute 6-year-old are off at school. That is probably my favorite piece of this. I mentioned Studio Grow. We have now just onboarded our newest hire. We're a team of 55 studio owners who have owned and operated studios really and truly all over the world. You might see some familiar faces that if you've been at any of FIBO or Elevate or any major fitness shows speaking from stage. We feel so gifted to have them working with us and a part of this. Oh, and here's just a few of them, which is some of my favorite things. All right. So I want to start with the idea. And I said, we really want to talk retention. If we're building community, our goal is to retain. And retention inside specifically of boutique fitness. And we'll talk boutique fitness and we'll talk the leisure center, more of the larger scale fitness club market. It's largely terrible. About 9.2% when we're looking at rolling 13-month retention rates. That means if I have 100 people who enroll with me in August of 2024, if I look ahead to September of 2025, we're looking at about 9.2% are going to still be with us when I'm looking at boutique fitness services. Now, as you can probably guess, that is not in my mind a very sustainable path. The interesting thing is it doesn't matter if you're making, and I've got this in dollars, so forgive me, 100,000, 500,000, or $1 million+ a year. The fact of the matter is most of us are set up on unprofitable models, and nothing we do, not more leads, not more revenue, not more things in terms of even community can fix an unprofitable model. More leads, more members, more revenue, more team, more time. These are the things we oftentimes hear people throwing at this problem, and it simply doesn't work. In fact, I find that any of these solutions, they're the exacerbation to your problem. All of a sudden, you throw more money on marketing and you have more leads, and yet the process is in place to manage those leads, or even better yet, to serve those members and retain them. If they don't sit there at the foundation, we have a significant problem. Additionally, and this is specific to boutique fitness, we know that over 90% of studios, as owners, they tell us that they're not earning a fair wage. In fact, about 50% of owners we interview say they are not paying themselves at all. When I dig deeper into this, and we have an awful lot of data and spend an awful lot of time gathering this across our industry, 94% of people say, hey, we're not profitable because the marketing is wrong. We don't know what we're doing. We're not sure. It's simply not working what we're doing in our market. 77% say it's time. I do not have the time for this. I am overwhelmed already. I have too much on my plate. 74% say it's team. They're missing the key team members. The team members maybe aren't properly trained. Maybe the team members simply aren't doing their job in a great capacity. And 42% say it's sales. And while I think all of these are true, it's rarely the root of the problem. In fact, in my mind, most things in our industry come down to marketing, sales, retention, and day-to-day operations. Now, today, we're going to hang out a lot on the retention side of this. The retention is literally the leaky bucket side of this. We all have had these images, and I grew up, my family had a number of farms. I've spent lots of time carrying buckets of all kinds of things. And you always knew immediately when you had a leaky bucket on the farm. Like, this wasn't even a question. It was pouring out if it was liquid. Now, in our studios and in our businesses, I feel like that's something we oftentimes miss. We're leaking members, we're leaking processes, we're leaking team, and yet we're not recognizing where we need to start immediately to plug those holes, and that even plugging those holes is going to make a massive difference. So I want to review kind of three kinds of retention. The retention of my clients, and how we're going to do that by community, by what we build out for them, the retention of my team, and really 2 key team members that I think make all the difference in changing your team. And then some just personal retention that I want to talk about at the very end. I don't have slides on these, but it's a conversation that I think is enormously important. The retention of your energy, your purpose, your future. Because the realistic piece of this is that if we don't have this in place, we have some significant problems. All of these things, they impact your revenue, your profits, and of course, really the future trajectory of your business. Jeff Bezos, arguably one of the most interesting and maybe one of the smartest business leaders of our time, says the customer is king, period. The fact of the matter is we live in a service-based world and we are in the heart of it. I argue that fitness is where hospitality and service meets. Now, for too long, we have viewed this as service only. And in my mind, this is a shift we all have to make if we want to see the growth and, quite frankly, the impact that is possible. Now, every month for most of your studios, dozens of new customers are going to walk on through your doors. Most of them are going to come for a variety of different reasons. They're going to come because they want to lose weight, because they want to gain weight, because they want to feel better. But when you probe deeper, you realize that they're coming to gain some type of value in their life. This is Bain & Company's Elements of Value Pyramid. I can't see you guys right now, but I am hopeful. I'm gonna let you raise your hands on this. How many of you have heard of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need? It came out late 1930s, early 1940s. It was the idea that certain needs needed to be met in order for us to transcend beyond this. It was at a time when famine was common, when many people of the world did not have consistent shelter, when we had just gone through not one but 2 major world wars, and the idea that stability was not a guarantee was at the front of Maslow's mind when he created this. Bain & Company, fast forwarding, let's just say about 70 years, said, hey, we believe this needs to be evolved. If you actually look now and you look at the data, most people have access to food. Most people have access to water. Most people are not living within a war zone. The reality is very different. So what are people coming for when they're seeking value, when they're trying to address 4 kinds of needs? The first is the functional need. You know, we know that our products serve a very functional need, right? These are going to be things that it reduce your risk of an early death, of illness, of things of the like. Ideally, if you're coming into one of our facilities, especially on the boutique fitness front, you're saving time because you're able to pop in and go. You are avoiding hassles. You are getting an incredible quality. And hopefully we meet all of these basic functional needs, which lets us grow just a little bit more to the emotional needs. You know, a lot has been spent over the last 4 years after the pandemic of what fitness does when it comes to mental health. So reducing anxiety, the therapeutic value of the services we provide are key. Wellness and the ability to be there. The fact that we can be more attractive, we can have fun and entertainment. We meet an emotional need for our clients. But ideally, we take this a step further in what we build. We're providing hope for people, hope that they can live a healthier life, hope that they can live pain-free, hope that their future is better than their past. We are motivation for people at its core. For those of you who are serving as key people in front of your team, this in front of your clients, you are their motivation. You are their cheerleaders. We provide this sense of affiliation, of belonging for people, that we are quite literally their third space that they can be, a place where they can come and be supported by one another. And one of the most important things is to understand why that person walks in. In fact, I think knowing the whys, and on that lovely chart, knowing what is most important to them, which is typically found in your sales process, this is actually where retention and community start. It comes by knowing and understanding the person who is in front of you. Now, it's true that sales processes do not exist in most studios. We went on ahead and we started at the end of last year doing a worldwide study of what was happening inside of the boutique fitness industry. We compared this with data that we had from software partners of ours, like LegitFit, from Deloitte, from McKinsey, from the Health and Fitness Association, which was formerly known as IRSA. And we found that the industry conversion average is disturbingly low. 5 to 15% of introductory package across boutique fitness studios in the 43 countries that we collected data from averaged between 5 and 15%. Now, this is not what I would consider normal or where you should be. In fact, when we compared this to clients we were working at in all of those countries, we realized that our average was significantly higher. And that was really chalked up to what we did during the sales process. Assumptively in fitness, we often assume that when somebody walks in knowing exactly what they want in our studio, not only knowing what they want, but what they need to do to get what they want. And we may send a couple of emails, maybe it's a few SMS or WhatsApp message or two, and we hope that that's enough to steer someone towards the right path forward for them, rather than giving them a very clear education or path. If someone's lucky enough to be the 5 to 15% who signs up and clicks on that member agreement, it feels as though oftentimes our work seems to stop. So it's not a surprise that when we go out 13 months ahead, that roughly 90% of our members have canceled. Roughly 10% are what we've retained. All of the work we've put in to gathering that member, building this community, and ensuring that they have a powerful purpose forward, it's for naught because we stopped the work at the most critical phase. I want to start with sales because I feel like I can't talk retention and community unless I talk how someone comes into your studio. So I want to just start by checking in what's working and what's not working in sales. Josh, I'm not going to be able to see this. I should probably be coming on a separate line, and actually maybe I'll do that over here on my phone so I can see some of y'all's answers for this.
I can keep a track of the comments in the chat anyways, but yes.
Perfection, perfection, perfection. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. First, I want to get an idea. If you have introductory packages because you have classes, because you have privates, because you have small group training, I would love to know if you're selling the right number of intro packages every single month. This is consistently and sustainably. So this is not on your biggest month. This is not on your smallest month. These are on the 8 months of year we consider to be average. So what are the right number of intros? If you're a private studio, it's roughly 10 to 20 monthly. Private is doing privates, duets, and trios. If you are a small group studio, it's 20 to 40 monthly. So small group, typically between 4 and 9 people at a time that you're working with. A mid-sized studio would be 40 to 100 and 40 to 120 intro packages monthly. A mid-sized studio between 10 and 19 people at a time that you're working with. A large studio, you might see upward to 450 intro packages monthly on this. So knowing that, a large studio, anything above 20 people in class at a time, I would love to first of all hear, are you selling the right number of intros? If you'll share that in chat, we're going to go back at the end of this and review that, but I want to get a clear view on that. Second, are you selling the right number of memberships? So if we know how many intro packages you've sold, now we come at this and we say, okay, do I have the right number of memberships? A private studio, 5 to 15 monthly. Small group studio, 10 to 30 memberships monthly. A mid-sized studio, 20 to 60 memberships monthly. A large studio, 60 to 225 memberships monthly. The first thing that I have seen on this is that oftentimes I will be speaking to a mid-sized studio, but they're performing like a private studio. Or I'll be speaking like a large studio and they're performing like a mid-sized studio. This is where we have that first issue that's coming into place, that we're simply not converting correctly. Just talking about the sales process, it's important to be aware of. The final piece and final question I have is normally time. What's the average length that someone is going to sign up and join you for? Now, this is a bit of a contentious question. And of course, if I go all over the world, some people are like, it's only month to month. Or if I'm sitting in Australia, it's week to week that somebody is joining us. Other places, it is normal to have a 3-month, a 6-month, or 12-month commitment. All of you probably look a bit different. But I do want to recognize that if you're minding the gap on this one, which is oftentimes the gap is the number of memberships that you're starting with, there is a key issue in relation to how long someone is committing to. And by the way, recognizing that they are committing to themselves far more than they are ever committing to your business. The problem oftentimes we see here that people who are in charge of studios perceive is that you're not selling enough. You know, there's a lot of conversion processes that may be missing. Maybe you're not pre-booking their intro package sessions, or you're not speaking to each buyer type. You're not booking a one-on-one conversation. You're not giving them a reason to become a member, a real reason. Maybe you're not having the one-on-one conversation, or you're having the wrong one. In my mind, this one-on-one conversation is one of the most formative things, and we know that there is a remarkable correlation between that conversation and how long someone will be in your studio and how they will utilize your studio. Maybe you don't ask for the sale. This is something that I in this region of the world, I see as a commonality. It's considered maybe a bit uncomfortable in some things to ask for the sale, or to say, hey, are you interested in moving ahead? I want to present to you some ways in which I would like to see you doing this. Maybe you're not building in referrals to this. There's some remarkable studies that have been done over the years of what happens when somebody has a friend or family member by their side and they are joining you. We know that based on a long-term, I think it was a 15+ year study, it was done at the University of Pittsburgh's School of Medicine here in the States. If you've got a friend or family member joining you, it's something insane, like 60%, 65%. I'm sorry. God, I'm doing this. 95% of people are still going strong 6 months from now. 2 years later, 65% are still going strong. This is like the magic bullet to get someone to build a habit. All of these are impacting your conversion rate from intro package to long-term membership. I shared this one before, but this is something that makes a massive difference. One of the first things you need to understand on this is that every single person that comes to your door is going to be one of 4 buyer types. You're going to have spontaneous buyers. They're our favorites. They're like ready to buy. You don't need to ask them for the sale. That credit card is already out. They come ready to take action. Your methodical buyers make up the vast majority of men. They come ready to ask questions. In fact, they are very curious about why you do certain things, what they can expect. You have to recognize that you need frequently asked questions to support this client, not because they're trying to be annoying, but because they just need them to make a decision. Your humanistic buyers are largely women. They're ready to hear stories and embed themselves inside of that story. And your competitive buyers, they are ready to wait. They're going to wait until the very last minute. You are not competing against other competitors or things of like, you are competing with their time. Now, when I start to communicate with those buyers early on, this is a great example of a way in which I do this. Now, the 7, 14, and 30 days you see at the upper left corner of my screen, these are types of intro packages we oftentimes put people on. Our buyer types are the 4 I just mentioned, and right now I've just focused on email to give you an idea. I want to make sure that I am speaking to all of these buyer types across all of the means I will communicate with them, whether it's email, SMS, WhatsApp, any other forms that you're using, chat bots, whether it's in studio. I am being thoughtful to ensure every buyer type's needs are met, and I'm making sure that I am booking that intake with them. One thing I always like to note on here is the final day, our competitive buyers, because I have to admit, the first time someone told me I needed to send 3, 4, 5 emails on a day, I was horrified. In fact, I thought it was rude. I'm from the deep South. I'm from New Orleans, which is in Louisiana, the southernmost part of the United States. And I looked at this and I said, I just can't do that. And finally, one of my friends, who's a rather brilliant marketer, pushed and pushed and pushed until I said, fine, I'm doing it. And shockingly, not only did nothing happen bad, but I converted about 40% more people. And I got all these notes thanking me for not forgetting about them. This is incredibly important when you recognize that competitive buyer types are the single biggest growing buyer type since the pandemic. We went from being very still in the very pandemic to being stretched to the max when it comes to time, and we need to meet people there. Now, if we know this one-on-one is important, we know that this is a key place where we're going to be able to set someone up for community and set someone up for retention. We need to make sure that we ask for that one-on-one. Ideally, we do it on the intro package sales, and if it's possible, thank you pages. So really letting people know that, hey, we're a unique kind of studio. We sit down with every single person that comes in. We get an idea of what you're looking for, what your intentions are, your dreams are, and we're going to ensure that you have a customized plan to meet them within our studio. Very simple. This isn't something where you're asking people for this. In my mind, I am telling them. I'm going to do this in confirmations of intro packages, confirmations of first class booked emails. I'm going to do this via SMS or WhatsApp after they're booked their first session. I'm going to do this when I enter the studio on their very first session. I'm literally going to be relaying this and inviting people to book that time, whether I'm checking in at the front desk, working with my teacher to check in, working with a private instructor or trainer on this. Now, when it comes to asking for the sale, I view this very much like sitting down with my doctor. I grew up with an old school family physician. Her office was in her home right around the corner from our house. So I would walk up to Dr. Nancy when I was sick. And I always remember the feeling of sitting down with her. She took her time. She heard what was wrong. She would diagnose what she saw the problem, and then she would prescribe the solution. You're doing exactly the same thing. You're going to hear the issues. You're going to diagnose the problem. You're going to prescribe what is the best long-term solution for them. The single biggest way to ensure someone is going to be a part of your community and someone is going to remain with you is to make sure that they are set up right at the beginning. Now, the template on this is really simple. I'm going to come back to this template. Let me show you the example of what this looks for. So we're going to base it off of what we've heard. So based on your low back pain, your fairly recent shoulder surgery, I'd like to, and this is where I'm going to deliver my prescription. I'd like to see you privately twice a week for a month, and then I want to shift you into 3 times weekly small group training. This is going to ensure the solution, we're strengthening your core rapidly and staying safe with your low back in the very beginning, and it's going to let you progress into our small group program where you're going to get very personal attention that you need. Based on all of this, I'm going to recommend our annual 3 times weekly small group training membership. And we're going to switch out the first month for privates, or you can join our 6-month option, which just won't have the same savings. Since you've been in our intro package, you get an extra special discount. It's $100 credit on your first month if you choose the annual membership, which works best for you. Now, guys, I don't view this as a very intensive or very hard sell. It's following a formula that is very much medicinal in nature, very much prescriptive. And I want you to recognize that you are in a position not just to have somebody work out, but to have someone change their lives for the better. And if that's the case, I feel like we are the very foundational first step of preventative medicine. And there's no reason we don't step into this role. Now, if we start the retention process in sales, it continues in what I consider traditional retention processes that begin when you gain a new member. Now, let's just take a check-in really quick, because this is it. And please pop this into the chat, because I'm going to be coming back to this in hopefully about 20 minutes or so, going through this with y'all. So the very first question, and I think this is foundation, is do you have an extraordinary 6 to 12 week member onboarding that ensures clients are consistent in that first, let's just say, 2 to 3 month period? This is something that, interestingly, when my oldest son was little, very little, 3 months old, I drove cross country with him. Cross country in the US from where I was driving to where we were going took us about 2 weeks, partly because we were driving with a 3-month-old. We were not the wisest people in our mid-20s. And when we got there, I'm being from New Orleans, I got to Houston, Texas. We stopped there because my mother called and said, you need to go and stay with your father. a hurricane is hitting New Orleans. And so I spent 10 days in Houston. We were getting ready to open our first brick and mortar facilities. And my dad said, hey, let's go over to the Houstonian. It's one of the most iconic fitness centers really around the world. And it has the highest retention rate of any facility worldwide, a 98% rolling 13-month retention rate. And I went in and I said, what do I need to know if I want to keep people for the long term, if I want to ensure their experience is extraordinary, if I want to ensure I am building a community that's going to be with me for years? And they said, the only thing you need to focus on more than anything else is what happens in the first 2 to 3 months and how they utilize your facility. Their data was so strong that they could literally tell based on how someone used that first 6 to 12 weeks, how long they were going to be a member for, literally down to the month. It was an extraordinary eye opener. And I want to make sure that we're clear on this. Most of you probably have an amazing culture. This is something you built, but if you're like thinking, oh my God, wait a second, no, it's not me. I have to be honest with you. If you can't provide that welcoming and warm environment, the team that is in place to do that is critical. And commitment. We talked about how long your membership length is, but what's the lifetime value of an average client? You may not know that right now, but when we get into lifetime value, it's simply the average number of months you keep a member times your average member cost. So it's typically about 3.5 months on average if we go out all over the world on this. So if somebody is paying roughly $100 to be a part of this, it's 3.5 months, their lifetime value is $350. We spend a lot of time using this money and trying to increase it for community and retention purposes, but also it's an important number for us to look back on marketing. Now, our biggest gap is we want to increase our lifetime value. We want to keep people with us. We want to build a community that lasts. The problem that we oftentimes see is that clients are canceling as fast as new clients are signing up. I mean, this is like the revolving door that you never get ahead on. And there's some processes that are oftentimes missing. Maybe it's a 6 to 12 week member journey. Maybe it's that you don't have a non-usage process. Maybe you've got far too many month-to-month or short-term memberships. Maybe there isn't a renewal process that's really driving people along. If I'm going to start, and I know community is at the core of what I do, my non-usage list is probably going to be the place that I began. Non-usage is anyone who hasn't been in 14 days. They don't have any future sessions booked. That means that they are officially on my non-usage list. And I'm going to want to start reaching out to them immediately. Now, I like to use an automated flow. Some of these are, 3 of these are true automations within a marketing suite. One of them is a handwritten note. My goal on this as I go through day 1, day 3, day 5, and day 8, so over roughly 8 days on this, is to do the heavy lifting and get their next session booked. Okay, that's all I want to do. Case in point, if I can get them through the door, I can save them, and I am keeping my community intact. Now, oftentimes when I talk to people about all of this, they say, oh my God, this is fabulous. We've got all these processes in place, but they're not actually getting used. And that's oftentimes down to managed day-to-day operations. So managed day-to-day operations are just the processes and systems that you follow every single day. So that I've got a readout of where you're at. Let's just go on ahead and pull up some lists here. And let's see what you have on here. So I would love to know, do you have processes that are being consistently followed by your team when it comes to selling intro packages, selling memberships, member onboarding, referrals, upsells and cross sales, retail sales, teacher training sales, if that's a part of your business, customer experience, cancellations, renewals, social media management, paid advertising, pricing, marketing strategy? Just grab a screenshot of this if you're like, oh my God, she went so fast. I couldn't believe that was possible. Grab a screenshot of this, and I want you to start marking these off because we need to make sure that this is in place at the core so your team is able to perform optimally. And so not only are you building the community and retaining your members, but we're starting to get into how you build and retain that team. Now, when I look at day-to-day operations, I tend to function in really 5 brackets. Daily operations. So daily operations, what I do every single day of the week. This is at the core. This is an execution oftentimes of marketing, sales, and retention processes. My weekly operations are typically once a week where I'm actually reviewing how each day of the prior week went, and I'm looking at the week ahead. Weekly operations takes place in about an hour and a half each week. Daily operations take about 90 to 120 minutes every day, even in a relatively large facility. Monthly operations are what we call postmortems. We're really looking back on key things like how my schedule performed, how my marketing performed, how my sales processes performed, and what this looked like. Quarterly operations are where I'm really building out things that are at its core. I'm building out my 90-day marketing plan. I am building out my schedule and reviewing with all of my team whether they're going to have time off, they're going to have space off for this. I am looking ahead at what I may need to be setting up for retail operations. And then when I get to annual operations, this is a highly strategic place where I'm building out my calendar for the year, my major marketing operations I'm going to be building out, all of my goals for the year, and I'm ensuring that I'm meeting my budgets and setting all of those things. I'm building out what my elevated and I'll call this advanced org chart is going to be about immediate hires needed, future hires needed as I'm going into different growth sectors. All of these things take me into an incredibly strategic place. Now, when I look at an owner, or in this case, if you are operating a managing director of this facility, you need to understand that it's easy to get trapped in a mindset. The operator stays in an execution mindset. They're all about doing things and checking the boxes. An owner mentality gets into analysis mode. What does the data say about what I'm doing? Where am I at? And the investor, that is a strategist. This is where we get into incredible strategy about how do I use all of these things to propel myself forward. All of this assumes that I'm going to have a team to run this. And I think you guys probably know that, that the retention of your team is probably the single most painful or exhilarating part of your business. If you keep your best performers, your job is so easy. If you lose them, it is like you are weeping away. Now, when I start and I ask people questions around this, I always ask, like, if you disappeared for the next 2 weeks, would your team meet all their goals and grow your studio with ease? Like if you said, oh my gosh, I mean, this just happened. We had multiple deaths in our family at the start to the middle of this summer. And I just took off. Would your studio keep growing if that happened? Maybe you have something much better than what I had. Maybe you're like, I'm going to sit in Fiji on the beach for 2 weeks. Like, can that work? More importantly, I would ask, if you have that, have you built a team that wants to stay and continue this? Do we have the growth trajectory for them? Do we have a salary that's going to continue to grow and expand? Do they have opportunities and clear bonuses and performance metrics? Do they know what it means to be successful in their role? Everyone on your team is going to be either a doer or a decision maker, okay? Doers are people that love to check the boxes. Decision makers, oh my goodness. They are the people who love to make the decisions. A doer will come to you over and over and over again. A decision maker will come to you at the end of the week and say, these are the decisions I made and why. It is a very, very different role. Now, I believe that most people can become decision makers. I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people. I run a pretty large team now, and one of my businesses, and one that I'm building right now, will soon have a team of about 70 by the end of next year. What I've learned is how I hire, how I onboard, the processes, the systems, and the accountability metrics I give, and how I coach to getting those accountability metrics met. This is all at the critical place of this. But in all honesty, you create decision makers by empowering them to take control. It means you're going to give up some of your control. This is where most of us get stuck. It is really hard to let go of control. I don't know about you, but I'm like hardcore recovering perfectionist. There is no question on this. You know, if you talk to my mother and it will give you great stories. I was on the phone with her like 2 hours ago. She always has great stories about this, of me as like a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old. Like, it's embedded in some of us and wired tight. I do want you to know that there is a good chance that no one on your team will ever do it as well as you do. That's why you either own or run the company, okay? That's totally okay. You don't need them to be at 100%. You need somebody to do it 80% as well as you do. Second question I've got for you is, do you have a consistent recruiting process that's actively seeking out not just members of your team, but ideal members of your team for teaching, for training, for front desk, for management, for any areas that you require in your studio? I'm a recruiter at heart. It is one reason why I have grown and why we've had so many successful businesses is I think I watched my mom do it, and it was very much built into her DNA. In our industry, it's probably more important than most because you're not truly selling yoga or Pilates or personal training or cycling or other boutique services. You are selling an experience with your team. This is people as a service, PaaS. You've heard of software as a service. Guess what? You and I chose a much harder path, and that's A-okay. People are at their nature a bit wild, a bit crazy, but they are what makes life worth living. Now, when it comes to a simple recruiting process, if you looked at my phone, I've got this lovely little notes section. My notes section, I've got this huge list of people that I'm like, I love them. Some of them are people I've met at the random. I hired a customer service director literally behind the customer service desk at Walmart, which is a budget shopping center here in the States. I watched her like handle what was arguably an incredibly difficult situation. And she did it with aplomb. And I was like, yes, you need to work for me. And where this goes, I take notes whenever I see somebody who has attributes that I am looking for. Most of my team has come from that list, and probably 90% of it. And when you start that list, there is power there. Once you've hired, as we think about team retention, just like we think about client retention, there is a 30 to 60 day, either part-time or full-time onboarding process that every single team member should be integrated into to make sure they understand your studio culture in and out. Now, the gap that often comes here is that you are the only decision maker. And guys, it is a problem if you have a team and the expenses that come with them, and it's all still on you. The processes that we often see are missing is that we don't have recruiting, so we don't have ideal team members. We have limited onboarding, so people are left kind of in a, oh my God, I'm figuring this out on my own. There's unclear expectations about what their job really requires. There's misaligned compensation, like you're asking them to do everything and the kitchen sink, and the compensation doesn't reflect that. It's ops versus ROI driven org charts. So ops driven org charts are driven by administrative tasks. ROI are driven by sales and retention. Limited accountability. No one's being held accountable, even if they're missing key metrics that their job is based off of. There's no ongoing coaching. You're not really there supporting them to grow as a human being, the soft and the technical skills. And there's a lack of quality control we see across the board. So all of a sudden, when you get this list of complaints from a group of people, you're like, oh my God, the quality control slipped because I wasn't maintaining it. Now, guys, I guess you could probably guess that I could go on and on. In fact, I had about 100 more slides, and I'm really glad that I put this slide in here right now. Since we have an hour, I'm going to stop here. If there is time, I'm going to take any and all questions from here. Let's see if I am out of that. Let's unshare my screen. Fabulous. Okay. Let's chat. Questions. And you guys can feel free to unmute. I don't want you to be afraid of this. I'm happy to chat with you. Let's see, I'm going to pop into this. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Or did I just roll through everything real fast? And I did a good job of this, and we're question free.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How you doing? That's all really good, but it's trying to put a structure around that is the biggest challenge I find. So like, I'm looking at it, I'm listening to it and going, doing some of that, not doing this, not doing this. So I'm there going, okay, where are you going to start? And how are you going to make it kind of a, a world-class facility? So where do you start?
All right. So if I was going to start, the very first thing, and I view this as very foundational, The very first place I started in any facility is I started in pricing. I know that sounds like a crazy, well, no. The first thing I started is the model itself. Like, is there something, are we bleeding money? Do we have financial metrics? Do we have data? Can we see what things are going on? I know that that sounds like a silly thing, but oftentimes if we don't have the numbers and we don't have what's really happening, it's really hard to make decisions going forward on that. So I pretty much always start there. The second thing I always look at is pricing. I realize we didn't talk about that today, but I'll go on ahead and say that I think oftentimes our product stack and how we are encouraging people through our facilities, this is something that hasn't evolved as regularly as I think it should have, and it's oftentimes not been priced correctly. So typically it's a review of that. Then it's almost always sales, marketing, and retention. Like, am I selling? And am I selling correctly? Okay, I tell you what, sales processes can fix probably 80% of what's wrong in most studios, including a lot of retention-based issues, because there's such a critical linchpin of this. And if I was going to say, how do I fix my sales processes? I start by knowing what my numbers are, and I start by really making sure, do I have the processes and systems that are around it? And am I willing to go in and train and coach to this? I was on with a client of ours yesterday. They're doing in the US about 1.1 million this year in a studio. And yet, you know, they are having one sales meeting every quarter. And they're like, well, our numbers don't look great. We're doing 1.1 million, but we should be doing probably closer to 2. And the fact is that this comes down to the processes and systems around sales. Marketing is an obvious, that's one that if you know you can convert people and find a turn on marketing, it looks different for every studio. And retention, the single biggest thing from retention that I think you need is a member journey. And I put it in that order of where we go. From there, when I know those things are in place, that's normally when I start to say, okay, let me look at operations on a whole. I start with daily operations always. Like, do people know what they need to do every single day in my studio? Can I check the box? Can I make sure this is going? I add in weekly accountability the moment I add in daily operations. So every week, you know, people are looking and I can say, hey, we had a high number of cancellations. Hey, we had a low number of referrals. Hey, we had a high number of complaints. We got some net promoter score issues that came in. And it's really just a consistent review. It's very data driven. Then it's all about being able to start to understand the process of the review and analyzing data and numbers. And that's when we start to put into place some of those higher and better things. When it comes to team, the first thing that I tell almost everyone is, you know, it is an assessment that you've got to do. And in some cases, you can limp along for 4 or 5 months while you're putting these other things in place with the team that you have. But at that point, I always start with like, this is my org chart. Like, this is my org chart, not for today, but this is my org chart for the next 3 years if I'm going to grow to where I want to grow. These are the roles I'm going to need. This is where it's going to go. And I make sure that I've got real clear performance, real clear bonuses, real clear salaries on all of those roles. And then it's an honest question of, do I have that role in place right now? If it is in place, is it the right person sitting in the role? And that's when I start to move into recruiting and hiring for what needs to be filled and where we need to be. Before I do recruiting and hiring, yes, I build out onboarding. The onboarding piece of this is something I feel like is ever evolving. It can be a lot simpler than we think, especially for part-time employees. And we can make it as complex as you need with everyone else. And that's kind of my list in order. A little convoluted, but we've done this enough times that I have to say there is like a method to the madness about where you can start. And just making sure that, hey, if you think about it as a pyramid, that each layer of the pyramid is foundationally secure before you go to the next layer as it goes. But yeah, I hope that answered. I was very verbose.
Cheers. Thank you.
That's fabulous. Easy. Anybody else? And thank y'all for having me on here and for hanging out with me at 5 o'clock, well, almost 6 o'clock in the evening. I really do appreciate that.
I'm going to go one more if somebody else wants to jump in. Sorry, no.
Right, I'll chat with you all day long.
Okay. Just in relation to what you said there, we're pretty okay with most of what you said, like even, you know, with marketing and sales, we have a marketing company that kind of does all that at this stage for us, and we kind of have weekly meetings with that. And we're pretty good on that line of things. What I'm looking to try and do is improve the customer experience from the minute they come in the door. Now, we do a 6-week program. We do the onboarding with them. We do all the consultations. We do the touch points once a week. We have a member staff that looks after all that for, you know, the 6 weeks. And our 6-week program, our conversion is probably about 85%, which isn't too bad. But it's trying to look at, you know, I suppose the inner circle crew, and as you say, the 90% that won't be here next year. And it's trying to improve their experience. Is there any kind of a pathway that you would kind of suggest in relation to that, even again, where you might start with that?
Yeah. So the first thing I would have a real awareness of. So I'm assuming if they're coming off of a 6-week program, it's extremely structured and probably heavily personalized during those 6 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So if we're coming in from that, the first thing that I would be concerned with would be to ensure that I keep as much structure as possible their first 12 weeks as a member. And that means that really starting to consider, what does the member onboarding look like? What are the touch points going to look like? How are you really going to ensure that, you know, as you're in looking at this, that you know that week 1, you want somebody to, you do want to pre-build. Let's assume you're doing weekly accountability sessions during the 6-week program. Maybe we have the first month of that. We do one of those a week for the first month. Maybe then we move to bi-weekly for months 2 and 3 on that. That is a very simple switch and a very simple shift that realistically anybody can do that just ensures people are staying on target. Maybe that we have key rewards that are built in. One of the things that we've just been doing with a couple of brands that I love is we've been doing, you know, setting up a way to assess people each month during those first 3 months. So if your goal is that, hey, somebody is going to be at a certain VO2 max, or they're going to be at a certain flexibility standard, or they're going to gain strength, or maybe it's as simple as they're going to assess that their sleep is improving, their nutrition is improving, they're feeling better. And we can gather those assessments once a month for those first 3 months. These are ways that we can then go back to a client and say, look at what you're doing. When it comes to these things, this is much more about providing that personal structure and watching very closely to make sure people are hitting key standards that you're offering. Though, so for one of you, this might be that they're coming in twice a week. For another one, it might be that they're coming in 4 times a week during their first month. You know, it's going to be dependent, but it's typically somewhere between 2 and 4 times a week. It's making sure that they've got the right instructors that they're with, the right trainers that they're with, and you're consistently training to this. Now, when it comes to like the world-class experience, there's a lot of other interwoven roles that you can look at adding longer term beyond this. But I would say if you just started there, and that was it, that it was like when somebody hits certain class milestones, there's something waiting for them behind the counter. When somebody, hits their 20th class and they do that by the middle of month 2, that there's an SMS that's gone out that just says, hey, we are like totally cheering you on. If there's something that's happening that they're reaching, that we're making sure that we are supporting them during this. And so if you want like simple, that's where I would start. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's kind of what I was thinking of. So that gives me a couple of ideas there that I can put in place already. One of the biggest challenges, I suppose, is in relation to testing and assessing people, and trying to make sure that what you're assessing, that you're going to impact it over the next 4 weeks. That is, when you assess it again, it's going to improve. Again, I'm hogging a lot of time here now, so somebody else might want to go in. So, but from an assessment point of view, is there anything you'd recommend? 2, 3 good assessments.
So it depends on the studio that I'm with. First of all, the simplest assessment is always to give people just a very broad assessment of, I typically do it by times of day rather than by how do you feel, because how do you feel is good. So it's like, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel mid-morning? How do you feel around the lunch hour? Kind of querying them on things like, are you seeing slumps? Are you seeing a lack of energy? Are you seeing this? How do you feel midday on this one? How do you feel, as you're coming home from work? How do you feel as you're going to bed? That is a very good assessment to walk people through, because almost 100% of the time that improves for people. It's simplistic. It's much more specific, and oftentimes a case in point, a great example of this is we'll find people will very quickly, that mid-afternoon slump disappears. And that's an easy thing to be like, my God, that's a massive win. You know, even querying on things like how much water you're drinking, how much coffee you're having, how many soft drinks you're having. Like you can choose on those, but diving in one of the facilities I have an equity stake in, we have a health span program that we check in every 30 days during their first 90 days. This one's a little bit more specific. We have a portable VO2 max that we look at. We look at some things in regards to grip strength. We look at some very basic balance assessments. We use a Staiku, which is very similar to an in-body, although it gives a physical view of somebody's body. And so we combine all of those things together into an assessment. And again, you're pretty much guaranteed that those are going to improve to some degree. The key thing on this that I can tell you is to set someone's expectations on what type of improvements they should make. Because inevitably they've been on Instagram or TikTok and they've seen somebody do something ridiculous that is probably completely AI generated or falsified. And so we typically say, hey, this is the range of what you're going to expect. Okay. And that's critical on where that goes. You know, in terms of other things, some people use very equipment specific tests. So we work with a brand that uses a lot of row formers and things like that. So we have tests that they do on those that are specific. So it depends on where you're at and what you're doing of what is the most practical. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for your time. I do appreciate it.
That was easy. That was easy. Anybody else? Just want to make sure, and I'm checking. I'm very good. My 1 o'clock, I moved to tomorrow just because I was scared I was going to run out of time. I saw my slide deck and I was like, oh God, this is not good. So, all right. Looks like we're pretty good on this one. So guys, if you need anything, don't hesitate to like ping me on LinkedIn or things like that after the fact. In fact, please ping me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm not very good on Instagram or some of the others on purpose. But I really would enjoy connecting with y'all and helping in any way that we can.